The bell above the bakery door rang softly as Amir stepped inside, the sound almost swallowed by the hum of refrigerators and the quiet clatter of trays being cleaned for the night. And for a moment he just stood there, holding his threadbare jacket closed with one hand and a small pink balloon with the other, its surface slightly wrinkled from being carried all day, his eyes scanning the glass display where rows of perfect cakes sat under warm lights like treasures he knew he couldn't afford. And when the young cashier looked up with a tired smile and asked how she could help him, Amir cleared his throat, feeling the familiar burn of embarrassment crawl up his neck, and said in a low, careful voice, "Do you have maybe an expired cake?" The words hung in the air heavier than he expected, and the cashier blinked, unsure she'd heard him right, while a man in a tailored suit standing near the coffee machine slowly turned his head, his phone still pressed to his ear, his conversation pausing mid-sentence. Amir didn't notice him yet. He was too focused on the counter. On the way, his reflection looked in the glass, older than his years, eyes hollowed by worry, thinking of his daughter Lena waiting at home, turning 6 tonight, sitting on the floor of their one-room apartment, coloring the same picture she'd colored 100 times, because crayons were cheaper than toys. The cashier leaned forward and asked gently why he needed an expired cake, and Amir swallowed hard before answering, "It's my daughter's birthday today. She doesn't know what a real cake tastes like. I just want something with candles." His voice cracked on the last word, and he hated himself for it, hated that after working 2 jobs and skipping meals, he still couldn't give his child a simple slice of happiness. Behind him, the man in the suit, Daniel Roth, a self-made millionaire, known in the city for his sharp deals and colder reputation, lowered his phone completely now, his eyes fixed on Amir, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest as he listened. Daniel had come in to buy a cake for a business celebration. Another success, another number crossed off a list. But as Amir continued speaking, unaware he had an audience, explaining how his wife had passed away 2 years earlier, how Lena was all he had left, how tonight he just wanted to see her smile, even if it meant eating a cake past its date. The bakery felt smaller, quieter, as if the walls themselves were leaning in. The cashier glanced nervously toward the manager's office, whispering that store policy didn't allow selling expired items, and Amir nodded quickly, apologizing, already turning to leave, already preparing the words he'd say to Lena. The bakery was closed. "Sweetheart, but we'll celebrate soon." When Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying weight, asking, "How old is your daughter?" Amir froze, surprised, and turned to face the stranger, whose shoes probably cost more than Amir's monthly rent, answering softly, 6. Daniel looked at the display again, then at the balloon in Amir's hand, and something shifted inside him, a memory surfacing of his own childhood birthdays spent alone after his parents' divorce. Candles melting into untouched frosting while adults argued in other rooms. He ended his call without explanation, stepped closer to the counter and said, "Wrap the biggest chocolate cake you have, and add candles, 6 of them." Amir shook his head immediately, panic flashing across his face as he insisted he couldn't accept charity, that he'd asked for expired cake for a reason. But Daniel met his eyes and replied quietly, "This isn't charity. This is a birthday." The cashier, sensing something important, moved quickly, and as the cake was boxed, Daniel paid without looking at the price, then turned to Amir and said words that would echo long after the night ended. "Sometimes the smallest requests carry the heaviest stories." Amir's hands trembled as he took the box, tears blurring his vision as he whispered thanks he felt weren't enough. And as he walked out into the cold night clutching a cake that smelled like cocoa and hope, Daniel stood there watching him go, realizing that in all his years of chasing success, he had never felt as shaken as he did in that moment. And as this chapter closes, remember that stories like Amir's exist all around us, unheard and unseen. So if this moment touched you even a little, subscribe to the channel now, because what happens next will remind you how one simple act can change more than one life. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. The image of Amir's trembling hands and the way his eyes lit up at the sight of that cake replaying over and over in his mind as he lay in his penthouse surrounded by glass, walls and silence. And when his assistant called the next morning to discuss investments, Daniel surprised even himself by asking her to find the man from the bakery, giving only a description and a first name, something he would normally dismiss as impossible. But by afternoon she had an address, and without overthinking it, Daniel drove across town to a neighborhood he'd only ever passed by, with locked doors and rolled-up windows, climbing narrow stairs that smelled of dust and old paint, until he reached Amir's apartment. Inside, Lena was laughing, her face smeared with chocolate frosting from the night before, the empty cake box still sitting on the table like a trophy. And when Amir opened the door and saw Daniel standing there, shock turned to fear, until Daniel quickly assured him he wasn't there to take anything back or ask for thanks. He stepped inside, taking in the cramped space, the patched furniture, the quiet dignity of a home built on effort rather than comfort. And as Lena shyly showed him her balloon and declared it the best birthday ever, Daniel felt something crack open inside him, a realization that wealth meant nothing if it never reached moments like this. He sat with them, listening to Amir's story in full this time, about losing his wife to illness, about working nights, cleaning offices, and days driving deliveries, about dreams shrinking, not because he lacked ambition, but because survival left no room for anything else. And Daniel found himself offering not money first, but opportunity, asking Amir what he wanted if fear wasn't holding him back. Amir answered without hesitation, "Stability for my daughter."